You guys hear me all right? I've been fighting this laryngitis for the last couple of weeks, so hopefully the voice will hold out. So that bio is actually a little bit old. So I started Brand Manage Camp and started Manage Camp Inc. 15 years ago. So it's been 15 years of doing this. So I've worked at big companies, and I'm also an entrepreneur, and I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the room. And I'm just really excited to be here to speak with you guys, to share with you some of the things that I've learned from some of the smartest people that I've been around for the last 15 years. I'm going to boil it down and give you hopefully some actionable insights you can take away, whether you're students or whether you're established business folks in the community or whether you're entrepreneurs just getting started, things that you can use right away. So I'm going to start my timer here. I know we're scheduled to 8:15. My goal is to be done significantly earlier than that. I know everybody's got a lot of things to do, and it's a Wednesday night. So first question though, to get things started, are you excited to be here? Yes. Yes? Wow, okay. Well, that was actually better than I was expecting. You guys popped up there. But see, I'm not talking about regular excited. I'm talking about four guys in a hotel room in the Philippines watching Miss Philippines make the semifinals of the Miss Universe pageant excited. That's kind of the level of excitement I was looking for, hopefully, but I'll take what I got. That was fine. I don't think I've been that excited about anything, ever. All right. I know the bar was high. The bar was high. So a little bit about me to start. As was mentioned, I have my wife and two daughters. We live in Colorado, in Douglas County, so a couple hours away from here. I've got a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old. We love being outside. We do a lot of hiking and biking and four-wheeling. I love this picture because it's a perfect representation of the difference between a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old when they're taking pictures, because the 10-year-old is just kind of like, yeah, here I am, take a picture. And the 13-year-old's like, huh? You know, it's that knee, somehow between 12 and 13, that knee got bent. And now in every picture we ever take, that knee is bent. I started out, as was mentioned, with Accenture, which was at the time Anderson Consulting Programming. That's kind of what it looked like back in the day when I did it. I then worked for a company called Reckitt Benckiser, Reckitt & Coleman, working on the Woolite brand, and then had a succession of jobs in both innovation and in base brand marketing for Nabisco, working on Parquet, where we brought back the talking tub. Does anybody remember the talking tub? Right? You guys don't. Yeah. They're like, margarine, what's that? And Campbell Soup in innovation, where I launched a brand called Soup at Hand, which was a portable soup that's still on the market, and also on the condensed soup business, working on the tomato and chicken noodle business. And while I was doing that, I went to a lot of conferences, and I was disillusioned by a lot of conferences, found myself going home early from a lot of conferences because I felt like I really wasn't getting the actionable insights I needed. And as was mentioned, whined to my wife one too many times, and she got fed up. So that's where Brand Manage Camp came from. This was in September. We had our 15th annual Brand Manage Camp conference, where hundreds of senior level brand marketers from all around the world come for 2 days of actionable insights. At 15 years, that makes us older than all of these things. We're older than Snapchat. You guys know that one, I know. We're older than Anchorman. You guys probably know that one. We're older than the hashtag. Back when we started, the hashtag was just a thing on the phone. It was just a pound sign. So not saying, you know, so if we're going to look at revenue and things, probably not the biggest, but we're the oldest. So we're going to go with that. And we have lots of different folks who come to our conference. They're split between B2B and B2C, product marketers, service marketers, big companies and companies not as big, and even some really small companies from all over, like I said, the country and the globe. What they're all there for is fresh thinking, and that's kind of people ask us what our theme is every year. We don't change our theme every year. Every year our theme is fresh thinking starts here. And for 2 days, these brand marketers come to our event for fresh thinking, to better connect with your consumers and customers, to better innovate, grow, manage brands, and to be better marketers. One thing I will mention is I noticed a lot of notepads and things. Don't feel like you gotta take furious notes. I'm gonna go through a lot of things. At the end of this, I'll give you my email address. You can email me and I'll send you a link so you can download the presentation, okay? A PDF of it. So don't worry if we go pretty fast here. Over the years, we've had over 160 speakers at the Brand Manage Camp Conference, and we've had some really famous people. You might not recognize their faces, but you probably recognize their names: Malcolm Gladwell and Seth Godin. We've got Sergio Zeman, who used to be CMO of Coca-Cola, Jack Trout, David Ocker, and Laura Rees, whose more famous father, Al Rees, wrote a lot of stuff with Jack Trout. So a lot of really famous people. The interesting thing is, over the years, probably the things that I've taken away most did not come from these folks. The things that I took away most came from the up-and-coming new gurus that were being developed, the people who are writing new books, the people who are doing new work. And that's kind of, as I went back over the last 15 years, what I wanted to do for you all tonight is try and find the things that you can take away and use. So there's been a ton of things that we've learned over 15 years. And what I did is I dug back to try and find what are the big takeaways that you can kind of think about, and what are 21 actionable ideas that you can start working on, again, whether you're a student or an established business person or an entrepreneur. So hopefully that's the goal. Hopefully at the end of this, you'll take away a bunch of things that you can think about for your businesses, for the way that you live your lives. Some of the things are more even life lessons that you can take away. And so we're gonna get into it. 7 big ideas, okay? So the 7 big ideas boil down to be something, be experiential, be simple, be ready to be creative, be flexible, be all about them, and be meaningful. And we're gonna go through each one of these, and for each one of these, I've got 3 main key takeaways that you can use, okay? So let's get started. We're gonna talk about, the first thing is be something, but not everything, okay? And so, most of you have heard and know that there's a lot of sameness out there today. No matter what business you're in, no matter what you're doing, there's a lot of messages out there, there's a lot of people doing the same things, there's a lot of inability to differentiate between competitors, right? And the goal obviously is to be the one that stands out. We've had a lot of folks talk about that, but the thing that also plays into that is the fact that not only is there more messages, more things to choose from, people's attention spans are now less than that of a goldfish, okay? It happened. We sunk below the goldfish, and this is your guys' fault, right here, right there, okay? Goldfish 9 seconds, humans are 8.25 seconds and dropping. Okay, so not only are there more things that you have to compete with to be different than, you also have to do it in a lot less time. You're not getting the same attention that we used to. And there's a lot of speakers that we've had that talk about this in different ways. They talk about being differentiated, they talk about being distinctive or unique or remarkable, like Seth Godin would say, or being bold, but they all kind of boil down to the same thing, which is how do you separate yourself from everybody else, okay? And so we're gonna talk about 3 ways. You'll find throughout this presentation, I have a number of books by a lot of the speakers that we've had. Again, if you're looking for a reading list, this will be a fantastic thing. If you want a business reading list at the end of this, there's probably 40 books that I list in here that you can go through and pick the ones that you might want to check out. But again, you don't have to write them all down. But we've had everything from Seth Godin and Purple Cow, Jack Trout, who wrote a long time ago, Differentiate or Die, which is, people are talking about differentiation today as if it's just started. People have been talking about this for a really, really long time. This year we had a guy by the name of Ben Parr who talked about captivology and how to captivate people's attention and more of the science of what attention is and how you can use that to interact with folks. The 3 things that I'm going to talk about as it relates to this are define who you are and define who you're not. Live it every day and know your right to win, okay? So when we talk about defining who you are, one of our speakers this year is a guy by the name of Scott McCain, and he writes a lot about distinction. And I love this quote from him because it really, I think, solidifies the problem that a lot of folks have not only in business but in life, okay? Most of us are not willing to draw a boundary because we're not willing to have a battle, right? It's this idea that we want to please everybody, that we want to make everybody happy, right? And the problem is, not only can't you do that, but you also can't differentiate what you can't define. And part of how you define who you are is by really understanding who you're not. okay? So if you can't describe to someone who you're not and who your business is not, then you're gonna have a hard time describing who you are. Speaker we had a number of years ago, a guy by the name of Patrick Hanlon. He wrote a book called Primal Branding, okay? And he talks about it this way. He talks about the importance of non-believers, okay? So if you think about your business, if you think about everything else, who are your non-believers? And to have the yin of believers, you have to have the yang of non-believers, okay? And we've seen this play out in things. What's this? Anybody know?
Apple and PC.
Right, Apple and PC, right? Can Apple really define itself if you don't make the PC the nerd, right? Without the nerd, are you the creative cool guy? Probably not, right? You're just some guy sitting around in a baggy sweater. 7-Up was the uncola, right? That's how it defined itself. It defined itself against colas. Republicans and Democrats, right? Can you really understand what a Republican is without understanding what a Democrat is, and vice versa, right? You know, in religion, God versus the devil, right? If you don't have those opposing ideas, and so when you think about it for your own business, for what you're doing, think about what you're not and who you're not going to be and who you're not out there to please, okay? And it will help you really, really understand who you are out there to serve and how do you serve them in a way that differentiates you, okay? Once you figure that out, you need to live it every day, okay? One of our speakers this year, and we've actually had her a number of years, she's a great lady, Jackie Huba, and she's wrote several books. One that she used lessons learned from Lady Gaga, where she wrote about monster loyalty. And she wrote another one, Fiercely You, which is actually, oddly enough, about her foray into drag queens and being a drag queen. And I did not know this, but you can have female drag queens. And she is one. So, and she's great, and she's awesome. One of the stories that she said, and you'll find throughout this, most of these stories are not mine, and I will never present them as mine. I'm going to give credit where credit is due to all these folks. I encourage everybody to do that whenever you're doing things like this. But she tells a great story about Alamo Drafthouse. So how many of you have been to Alamo? Anybody? Okay, so you guys are familiar. For those who aren't familiar with Alamo Drafthouse, it is it's a relatively new cinema based out of Austin, Texas, who has some unique points of view on things, and you can drink there. You guys can't, but I can, and I do. They've gotten a lot of great press, right? So best theater in America from Entertainment Weekly, the coolest movie theater in the world, best theater ever, and their mission is really cool because they want to set themselves apart. If you think about them versus an AMC or versus any other Cinemark theaters, right? What they want to be is they want to provide an awesome experience for true movie fans, right? Not the casual movie fan, the true movie fan, the one who really understands cinema, the one who really wants a true cinematic experience, okay? Which lets them do things like this, right? Which is an all-clown showing of the new movie It, right? They did an all-female show, and like only women. They got a lot of press on this, right? They had an only female showing of Wonder Woman, and men went crazy because they couldn't get in, and then women were like, "What? That's crazy." So they do cool things like that, but they have rules, right? And their rules to anybody. I mean, the folks who have been to Alamo, you guys know the rules, right? They're pretty clear about the rules when you go in here. They let you know. They do not play ads. They do not allow children under 6. They don't allow unaccompanied minors. They don't allow latecomers. And they're really, really serious about this, that they do not allow talking or texting. They do not want you pulling out your phones. This is why you guys have never been, because you cannot pull out your phone. Okay, I'm going to pick on you guys all night. So, and they take this seriously, okay? And so seriously that they're willing to stand up for it, okay? And they're willing to defend themselves against people who don't like that, because those are not the people they want in their theater. So they had an incident where a woman was thrown out, and it appears she was probably inebriated, you'll hear, but she called and left a voicemail for them, being very upset with the fact that she was thrown out of the theater for texting. And so what did Alamo do? They did not hide this. They took it and they put it up on YouTube. She is not happy for sure, right?
And everyone's silent. It wasn't on loud. It wasn't bothering anybody. You guys, honestly, were being complete. And I'm sure that's what you do. You know, to rip people off, take my money, and you throw me out. You know, I will never be coming back to your Alamo Draft House or whatever. I'd rather go to a regular theater where people are actually polite. And, you know, I'm going to tell everyone about how you are. And I'm pretty sure you guys would be on purpose. So thanks for making me feel like a customer. Thanks for taking my money.
Okay, so they are unapologetic, right? They're unapologetic about the fact that they threw this woman out because that is not what they're about. They have drawn the line for who they are for and who they're not for, okay? And that's something that you need to live every day. So it's not enough to just define it, you have to actually live it, and Alamo lives it, okay? You also need to know sometimes what your right to win is. And this one's actually my personal story, so I didn't steal this from any speakers. But anybody know what that's for? SWOT analysis, right? So what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? What are the weaknesses? What are you supposed to do with weaknesses?
Turn them into opportunities.
Yeah, you're supposed to fix them, right? These are your weaknesses. You're supposed to try and turn them around into strengths. But what if your weaknesses are actually your strengths, right? And you're just looking at it the wrong way. Okay, so I used to work for Campbell Soup. I used to work on the chicken noodle and the tomato soup business, condensed soup business. You know, they're the ones that comes in cans that you got to add water to, right? And for a while there, back in the day, so now we're talking early 2000s, we were getting beat up by Progresso. And Progresso's whole story that they were telling in advertising is, Campbell's is for kids. We're for adults. Okay, we've got meat, we've got potatoes, we've got big vegetables, we've got noodles, right? Campbell's is kid stuff. And you know what? For a while, we tried to find them because we did our SWOT analysis, and our weakness was we didn't have enough meat, we didn't have enough, vegetables. And then we turned around and we did it, and we said, well, you know what? Little kids don't want a lot of meat in there. They don't want a lot of vegetables. We are for kids. I think they're right? So when we flipped that on its side, when our weakness actually became our strength, it became our right to win, they actually handed that to us, right? There was nobody else that could own Kids Soup but Campbell Soup, and Progresso did that for us, okay? And so the lesson there is to, when you're doing this, don't think about weaknesses in terms of the way everybody else defines you, right? And a lot of times your weaknesses are actually your strengths, all right? Just looked at from a different angle. So that led us to kind of double down on, we brought back old advertising. I don't know if everybody remembers the melting snowman, right? And then we launched a whole line of kids soups and all sorts of flavors, and we did a lot of licensing with Dora and and leading up to all the new things today. And it really required us to kind of flip that around, and SWOT analysis are great, but I think they can be detrimental if you get too caught up in what those things are, right? So think about your weaknesses or sometimes your strengths. Okay, so be something, which means define who you are and who you're not, live it every day, and know your right to win. Okay, number 2, be experiential. And this is something that I've noticed over the last probably 3 years, our speakers over and over again are talking a lot about. And it's the idea that no matter what you do, you don't sell products, you don't sell services, you sell experiences, okay? People don't want to buy a widget from you. They want to feel something. They want to experience something, okay? And then, like I said, we've had a lot of speakers who have talked about this and written about it. All these books are great books. All the way back to The Experience Economy, which Joe Pine and Jim Gilmore wrote, probably 20 years ago, to the newer stuff, which is Brian Solis and The Experience, the Experience When Business Meets Design, and Carla Johnson's book on experiences, all good stuff. 3 things that we're going to talk about, because experiences is a big subject, and I could go on for hours just on experiences, but I want to, again, give you 3 things that you can think about right away that you can use. One of them is going to be wow your audience. 2 is going to be using all the senses, and 3 is going to be all touch points. And those are things that you can go back and start working on right away. In terms of wowing your audience, I'm going to steal an example from Andrew Davis, who wrote a book called Brandscaping. He is a fantastic guy, and I will not do this story justice because he is a bundle of energy. This guy runs around the stage and bounces up and down. He has like 40 cups of coffee a day, and he's just, it's hard to keep up with him. But he tells a story about implosions, okay? And this is the Boardwalk Casino. Does anybody remember the Boardwalk Casino in Las Vegas, right? Yep, I know you do, right? So back in 2006, the Boardwalk Casino was not the place you wanted to stay, right? It was pretty run down, and they were getting rid of it to make room for Aria and the new city center that went in there, okay? And so they put out an RFP for proposals for someone to implode the Boardwalk Hotel. And they got a bunch of proposals, and all of them were kind of between $9 million and $13 million, and they all focused on the same exact three things. They focused on how safe they were, they focused on how experienced they were in blowing up buildings, and they focused on how little of a mess they're gonna leave, okay? And they were all exactly the same, and the developers picked the one kind of right in the middle for $11 million, and they did an implosion, and it looked like this. This was kind of filmed by some drunk people in a building next door, so their commentary gets a little. So the whole thing took probably less than 30 seconds. It happened at 3 o'clock in the morning, and there it went. Yeah, look at that dust bomb. They were really excited, okay? Go to the next year, okay? And the Frontier Hotel, which, if anybody remembers, was across the street from the Wynn, okay? They were making room for a new development called the Palace Hotel and Resort, which actually to this day has not been built. It's still an empty lot, but they had grand plans when they were doing this. And they put out the same request for proposal, and they got the same proposals back, mostly between 9 and 13 million, and everybody talked about being safe and being experienced and leaving no mess, except for one company. One company came in at over $33 million, okay? And they talked about making an experience out of this implosion, about making it an event, about using fireworks and all sorts of different things to make it a 30-minute experience. Lots at 9 to 11 million, everybody came in to 9 to 13 million. Here's one at 30, 35 million. And 30, 35 million is the one they went with. And that looks something like this, okay? Now I had to shorten it because again, this was 30 minutes, but you'll see it kind of starts out with fireworks going from the top of the building, and it's, you know, they've got fireworks going back and forth, there's things coming out of everywhere, okay? Now, like I said, I mean, they blow out windows, people were setting up, they made an incredible show about this, right? And they really built it up. I'm gonna fast forward to the end, right? The end, they've got a fuse going up to the building, okay? They've got a countdown, right? 8, 7, forget the fact the 7 didn't work. 6, 5, 4. You guys ready for this thing to implode, right? You're getting ready, right? 3, 2, 1, right? Not yet, not yet. We're gonna have a plunger. The plunger comes down, okay? We got the plunger coming down. Almost. It's gonna go, I swear. They built this suspense for 30 plus minutes, and then they brought it down. Okay? At the end of the day, the end part looks exactly the same between the two of them, right? One of them got 3 times the revenue out of it because they created an experience. And not only did they do that, but they built a business out of doing that around the world, imploding buildings in a way that ushered out the old and ushered in the new, okay? That's the difference between providing a product or a service and providing a wow experience. So if you think about your own business, where are the opportunities to provide wow, right? Where are the opportunities to go that extra level to justify that extra dollar, right? The other piece of this is using all the senses. Martin Lindstrom is a really cool guy. He wrote a number of books. He wrote a book called Brand Sense. He wrote a book called Biology. He's a super cool guy. And his whole thing on this book called Brand Sense was about using all 5 senses, right? So we're good at using sight and sound. We're not as good about using smell and taste and touch, okay? And a lot of us will step back and say, well, that really doesn't apply to me. You know, nobody can smell my product, right? I make cement for filling basements. Well, we had someone who was in the audience when he talked about this, who worked for a company that made cement for filling basements. And they started thinking about, we've got issues with when it gets wet, the mildew smell, right? So how do we work into our product the ability to counteract smells, right? So they took that and seemingly unrelated. Pleasing smells can improve a customer's mood by 40%. On-brand sound is 96% more likely to prompt recall. How many of you are actually thinking proactively about the sounds that your customers or consumers experience when they interact with you, right? Intentional thinking about all these senses are the things that will set you apart from your competition. 35% state how the feel of their mobile phone is more important than how it looks, okay? The touch, the sensory aspects of it. A supermarket in the UK, Asda, was finding that people were having a hard time making decisions about toilet paper in a toilet paper aisle. They had 100 different toilet papers. So what they did simply is provide an area where they opened up some of the packages and let people touch them. They let people interact with the feel of that toilet paper before they bought it, and they saw sales go up, okay? AudioBrain is a company that we work with, and we've worked with for a long time, and their whole business is around intentional sound. They've worked with all sorts of companies, from IBM to Major League Soccer to Google and Xbox. They do all the sound for NBC's Olympics coverage when they did it in Sochi, they did it in Rio, and all these companies, and even when you think about GlaxoSmithKline, which is a pharmaceutical company, right? All these companies, whether it's internal, external, when people call you, when people come to your store, when people talk to you, what are they hearing? What are they seeing? What are they feeling? What are they smelling? These are all opportunities when we talk about differentiating yourself, okay? So wow your audience, use all the senses and all the touch points, all right? A lot of times we get sucked into thinking just about our interaction when people are making that purchase, right? And we forget about all the touch points. Well, I got a laser, look at that. I got all the touch points pre-purchase and post-purchase, right? So pre-purchase and making sure all these touch points are consistent. Are people getting the same message from you when they get an email from you as when they talk to you on the phone, as when they go to your website, as when they go to their store, or however they interact with you? Are they getting that same message, and are you interacting with them? Are you providing the same sounds? Are you providing the same sights? Are you providing the same cues, right? So thinking about all the touch points is incredibly important. Wow your audience, all senses, all touch points, okay? The third one is kind of counterintuitive for the way that a lot of us do business, and it's be simple, okay? And there's been a number of folks who have written books about this, and actually, if you go through, I would say if you only picked 2 books to read, one of them would definitely be Made to Stick. And if you haven't heard, it's written by the Heath brothers, Chip and Dan Heath. Fantastic book. I absolutely recommend it. But a lot of folks have written about, like Barry Schwartz talks about, the paradox of choice. And the paradox of choice is this idea that the more choices we're provided, the less likely we are to make a choice. Okay? And there's been a lot of work done on this. And so what we can do is we can simplify choices, we can simplify decisions, and we can simplify communications. Okay? Now, Sheena Iyengar and Barry Schwartz both wrote separate books, and they're almost identical, so pick one of them. I think Sheena wrote hers first, and actually some of Barry's work is based off Sheena's work. But they both talk about the same thing, which is this idea that more is less. So when you go through the supermarket aisle, how do you make a decision in the cold and flu aisle? How do you make a decision in the toothpaste aisle when there's all these different choices? And what they found is that there's 3 things that come from having too much choice. One is decision paralysis. Sometimes we just won't make a decision. Our brains shut down. There's too much to choose from. We can't even deal with it. The second thing, if we do choose to make a decision, is that our decision quality, the more choices we have, our decision quality actually goes down. Not only in terms of the quality for ourselves, but the quality for the business. So the consumer makes the wrong decision for themselves, and they also make the wrong decision for the company that they're buying from. And then they have much more decision remorse. The more choices you have, the more likely you are to think that you made the wrong choice once you make a choice, okay? Sheena did a study. It was called the Jam Study, okay, where they were in a supermarket, and they had a table out for tasting jams. And in one element of the study, they had 6 jars of jam to taste, and another one separately they had 24 jars of jam. Okay, so by show of hands, who thinks that the table with the most jams got the most people over there to look at it? Okay, you're all wrong. The one with the most jams actually got the most people to look at it. Okay, so most people came over to try the jams when there were 24 jams out. The problem was, when it came down to making a decision, they were 10 times more likely to buy a jam when there were only 6 to choose from. Okay, so the more choices they were given, the less likely they were to actually make a choice, because they were too afraid of making the wrong choice. Okay, and so they made no choice at all. So when you think about your business, how do you bring down the number of choices that people have to make? Okay, think about buying a car. Whether you buy your car a la carte or whether you buy it in. My wife has a Honda minivan, right? If you want the doors to close on their own, there's like one thing. There's only one Honda minivan you can buy, right? There's only one choice. If you go and buy a Ford, you can choose 50 different things, right? When you provide people with less choices, they're more likely to make decisions. And that's why most car dealerships now don't sell made-to-order cars. They try to. They'd rather, because then they could have less inventory on the lot. If they could just make a car for you, the car that you wanted, and ship it when it's ready to go, they wouldn't have to carry 7,000 cars in their lot that get killed by every time there's a hailstorm, right? But they have to, because people don't want to make those choices. They just want to choose from the decisions that's already been made for them. So think about, how do you decrease the number of choices people have to make? More choices means they're less likely to buy, more likely to make the wrong choice, and less likely to be satisfied. Simplify your decisions. So Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Blink. Okay, has anybody read Blink? Definitely recommend it. It's a great book. One of the things that you might remember in that book is there was a study where they did at Cook County Hospital in Chicago. Okay, and they were having a problem in Cook County Hospital in Chicago diagnosing people who came into the emergency room as to whether or not they were having a heart attack. So people would come in with symptoms, and they were missing it on both ends of the spectrum. They were falsely diagnosing people as having a heart attack who were not, and they were sending people home who were actually having heart attacks. And so they did a study where they took 2 groups of doctors. One group of doctors was allowed to see their patients, okay, and ask whatever questions they have and do whatever tests they wanted to do. The other set of doctors was only given a set of test numbers. And there were like 4 test numbers that they were given. They never got to see the patient at all. The doctors who did not get to see the patients were far superior in actually predicting whether they were having a heart attack or not, okay? Because the people who were seeing the patients were letting all sorts of unrelated things bias their decisions. Someone came in that was obese, they're having a heart attack. Someone came in that was young and skinny, they're not having a heart attack. But these things actually had very little correlation as to whether someone was actually having a heart attack. It was more based on scientific facts from the tests that were done. So what they found is that more information in this case was actually leading them to make worse decisions. So the implication for you is, how do you figure out the information you actually need to make decisions in your business and limit yourself to that information, not letting yourself get biased by all the other information that's out there for you, okay? And you need to simplify communications. And by simplify communications, I mean both external to your customers or consumers, right? And internal to yourselves, to your employees, to your shareholders if you have them, right? I don't know if anybody's ever said this, right? If I had more time, I'd write you a shorter letter, okay? This is not something new. This was written by Pascal in like the 1600s. In the 1600s, they knew that it was easier to write a longer letter and just spill everything out than actually take the time to figure out what people wanted to hear. Okay, so the only reason that things get really long is because we're lazy, because we don't put in the effort to actually factor down to the actual things that people need to hear. Okay, here's a mission statement. I want someone to try and guess, even guess the category of company. To create a shopping experience that pleases our customers, a workplace that creates opportunities, and a great working environment for our associates, and a business that achieves financial success. That's their mission statement. Does anybody have a guess as to who that's for? Amazon? No. No. Albertsons, okay? The point is, that could be anybody, right? That's a whole lot of words, but does it really say anything? Right? That's someone who doesn't want to commit to anything. That's someone that wants to be everything. That's someone that wants to check off all the boxes, okay? This does not say anything. Simplify your communications. Focus in on what's important. Focus in on what people need to hear Okay? How many people have been in a presentation where a salesperson sits down and provides like a 700-page deck on why you should buy their stuff when all you really needed to get was one piece of information? Okay? So what they did is they told, my 10-year-old daughter does this all the time. She'll start a story and I'll be like, Sammy, you told me that, but she can't stop. You know what I mean? Once her head starts going and she's got to tell that story, her head's going to explode. It doesn't matter if I've heard it already because it's not about me. It's about her, right? So make your communications about them, right? Whether it's your employees, whether it's your customers, whoever it is, your family, think about what people want to hear and what they need to hear in order for you to get the actions that you're looking for. Be simple. Simplify your choices, simplify your decisions, simplify your communications. Okay. The fourth one is be ready to be creative. And this is kind of, how many people out here like me have not worked out in a little while? Somebody raise your hand. You're brave. I know. There's some people out here who have not worked out, right? Now, if you were sitting down and someone came and grabbed your purse or your book or your pen and started running out the door and you got up to run after them, how likely is it that you're going to pull a muscle? Pretty good, right? I mean, are you going to catch them? Probably not. Probably not. Because you wouldn't run a race without training, and creativity is no different. And that's why we have a lot of speakers over the years who talk about creativity, who talk about innovation, and they talk about it in a way that creativity is not something that is just serendipitous, right? You have to work at it. You got to practice it, okay? And there's three things. You have to be disciplined, you have to practice it, and you have to reward it, okay? I'm going to take like I said, my voice has been and it's amazing how a lot of our speakers will over the years, it's been consistent that some people feel like only creative people can be creative. Like you're either born with it or you're not born with it. And every one of our speakers who talks about creativity or innovation talks about the fact that creativity is not something you're born with. Creativity can be learned. It is a discipline. There's a science to it, and you have to work at it. Okay, and one of the great guys who talks about this is a guy by the name of Josh Linkner, and he wrote a book on it called Disciplined Dreaming. And his discipline is all about, I want to make sure I get this right. So he talks about asking, which is defining the creative challenge and asking questions, and then you lead into preparation, where you get your organization ready to address those challenges. Then you get into discovery, where you use activities to seek out creative ideas. And then you hit the ignite phase, where you develop the creative sparks into fully formed ideas, and then you build an action plan to bring them to life in the launch phase, okay? And that's his discipline. And I used to work in innovation for Campbell Soup, and we had a stop-gate process of innovation where we had specific areas that we had to, things that we had to meet, things that have to, we'd start with the funnel and we'd boil it all down to the things that come out the bottom end of the foil. Whatever your process is, the point is that you need one, okay? That you need to think about, how do we enable creativity within our organization, right? How do we set up the environment for creativity? And how do we work on it every day? Leading to the second point, which is practice. Again, creativity is a muscle, okay? And it has to be, you can't just go about your daily business, filling out your daily reports, doing your spreadsheets, and then all of a sudden it's like, let's be creative. It doesn't work that way, right? And that's not how you get your best ideas. And so I'm going to talk about a few things that you can do tomorrow, whether it's in your work groups or in your businesses, to get better creativity. One of them is observation. Okay, someone made a really good idea about designing the walkways here, but you know what? Consumers don't follow what we think are the good ideas. Consumers are going to take the path of least resistance, right? And so that's the difference between user experience and design, and that's why we have to pay attention. We have to look at how people are using our products, not talk about internally how we want people to use our products, because that's kind of irrelevant. It's irrelevant how we want them to do it. What's relevant is how they want to interact with it, how they want to use it, how they want to react in the real world, okay? Does anybody recognize what these beds are? What kind of hotel room that would be? Anybody stayed at a Westin? So the heavenly beds, right? So the heavenly beds, Westin was kind of the first one to really focus on the beds. You guys probably don't realize this, but everybody remember what the bedspreads used to be in hotels, right? They're just like disgusting, right? They would create the patterns that were just most likely to hide all the dirt, right? They're just floral and paisleys and just, it looked like someone's tie just got turned into a bedspread. But you know what? what Starwood and Weston did is they observed how people interacted. And what they realized is that in those hotel rooms, the first thing that people did when they walked into the hotel room was not put their stuff away, was not turn on the TV, was to take that bedspread off the bed and throw it in a corner somewhere where they didn't have to look at it, okay? And so what they said is, what we want to do is we want to make these beds things that are inviting, that people want it, right? So they made it all white, right? And they made it clean, and they made it so that when you walked into that room, you knew that that had been changed, that there had been laundry done, right? That this was a comfortable place for you. And they did that by observing, right? The other thing that you can do is you can change location. So when you think about the fact that, you know, most of you, if you're in business or whatever, you might have a conference room where you have your meetings, right? Or, you know, it's a place where you always have your meetings. What I used to do when I was at Campbell Soup is sometimes, because we were in Philadelphia, so we had a train, you know, we can hop on a train in New York. Sometimes we just get on a train, not to go anywhere, just to go to New York and turn around and come back and have our meeting on the train, right? Where we're exposed to people who are walking by, people in the train station, people buying things when we walked into stores. Just changing location. I don't know if you ever see this, but I feel like if I'm at home a long time, if I don't get on the road, when I get on the road is when I'm most creative. Because all of a sudden my stimuli have changed, right? My environment has changed. So think about how on just in a daily basis, you can change your environment, okay? Get out of the office, have some field trips. The other thing you can do is role play, right? Spend some time putting yourself in the role of your competitor, making someone in your organization play the role of, if someone was going to be a startup, if someone was going to be an entrepreneur that was going to come try and steal from you, what would they do, right? And play that out. Play that out. What would they do? Where would they attack? What would be the space that they would want to play in? Okay? So all those things are just things that you can do on a daily basis starting tomorrow. You can role play, you can change your location for stuff, and you can observe. Get out there and observe. The other thing that you can do is intersect the unrelated. Franz Johansson wrote a book called The Medici Effect, which is all about, you know, he went back to kind of the Renaissance and how the Renaissance got started by the Medici family, taking all these seemingly unrelated people, so sculptors and painters and mathematicians, and putting them together, and cool things came out of it, okay? So the idea of where can you find inspiration in seemingly unrelated places? So there's an architect, Mike Pierce, who took inspiration from termite towers to create buildings in Africa that were cooled without air conditioning, all right? And they learned that from biomimicry, right? By looking at how things happen in nature. What are things that you would think are completely unrelated to you, industries that are completely unrelated to you, products that are completely unrelated to you, and where are the intersections? Where are the things that you can learn from them, okay? These are all things that you can do daily. The other thing that you need to do is you need to reward creativity, because you know what? Sometimes you're going to fail. And if you make failure a bad thing, then people don't want to do it, right? So Tata is a huge Indian they're billions of dollars of business. They have failure awards. They reward the biggest failure of the year, okay? And people compete for it. I'm pretty sure I would have won that. Sure Payroll, they give a $400 Best New Mistake Award, which is actually twice the size of what the highest award of the person who did something that succeeded gets, okay? So the best win only gets $200. The best failure gets $400, okay? That's how you encourage people to take risks. That's how you encourage people to be creative, okay? Intuit has failure parties. They have a party when something fails to put it to rest. They don't just sweep it under the rug. They celebrate it. They celebrate the effort that went into it, the thinking that went into it, okay? It's a discipline, practice, and reward. How are we doing here? Okay. Need to be flexible, okay? Everybody knows Albert Einstein. What did Albert Einstein say the definition of insanity was? Right. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. One of our speakers, Tom Asacker, had a different bent on that, okay? And what Tom said is that insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting the same results. And I think that's more appropriate for this world, because when you're doing the same thing over and over, nobody else is staying the same, right? Your customers are not staying the same. The media marketplace is not staying the same. The environment is not staying the same. Culture is not staying the same, right? So what worked last year isn't necessarily going to work the same this year. The competition has changed. right? So if you think that you're going to do the same thing over and over and expect the same results, it's kind of like this guy. He's walked down this street 100 times texting on his phone. It's just there's never been a van there before, okay? Or this lady, every day she walks in, that elevator's open until it's not, right? So you can't expect things to stay the same just because you keep your things the same. The world is changing, right? And the way people are interacting are changing. Multiple screen, I mean, they're not even watching TV the same way, right? Everybody's got their iPads and their phones and their TVs, and they're walking around, and there's so many different stimuli and so many different things going on that you have to change constantly, okay? If you're still having strategic meetings like this, where you sit together in a boardroom and you put together your plan for the next year and you talk about your 5-year plan, I mean, who has a 5-year plan that's actually been executed, right? Who's been able to see what the next 5 years has been like, right? Your planning needs to look something like this, right? And the new terminology for this is real time. So we need to be marketing and planning and strategizing in real time. And this is kind of a strategy room that some companies have where they're monitoring things going on right now. They're looking all over the world, all over the globe, all over the web for what's happening right now as it relates to them. Real time is actually a term that the first time I heard came from a guy by the name of David Meerman Scott, and he wrote a book called Real Time Marketing and PR, which is a really cool book, and David's a really great guy. And in order to do real time though, there are 3 things that you really need to be able to do. You need to budget, you need to organize, and you need to be careful, okay? So when you make your budget, you can't earmark every dollar, right? Because earmarking every dollar is the assumption that you know what's going to happen for the next year, which we don't. You need to leave money aside for flexibility. You need to be flexible with your budgets. You need to have a contingency set aside in case something happens and you want to do something different, okay? You also have to be organized for it. These things do not happen in companies that I've worked for in the past. You might come up with a great idea, and then all of a sudden, who gets in your way but the lawyer, right? Because the lawyer's like, oh, no, we're not doing that. That's too risky, right? Because we never talked about it ahead of time. We never had a plan ahead of time for how are we going to implement real-time ideas, right? An opportunity comes up, something happens, we want to take advantage of it, but we don't have the organization set up ahead of time. So you have to be ready to be flexible, which means you have to plan in advance to be flexible. You have to plan your money, you have to plan your budget. But you also have to be careful. Does everybody remember Super Bowl 2013, right? There was a huge blackout, right? And for every great thing like this, so who took advantage of that in real time was Oreo Cookie. So in the middle of the blackout, they sent out a tweet, power out, no problem, you can still dunk in the dark, okay? They won the Super Bowl with that ad, and that wasn't $1 million or $10 million or $100 million Super Bowl ad. That was someone sitting there ready to take advantage of things as they're, and having the ability and the permission to do so. But for every one of those, there's one of these. So at the bombing, after the bombing at the Boston Marathon, Epicurious, in honor of Boston, New England, maybe we suggest whole grain cranberry scones. Our hearts are with you. Here's a bowl of breakfast energy we could all use to start today. How does that make you feel? Does that make you want to do business with Epicurious, right? Or does that make you feel like they missed the mark, right? So you have to be careful. Here's the great one. We had no idea Oprah was tatted, and we love it, the Oscars. The problem is that's not Oprah, okay? That's Whoopi Goldberg, okay? They messed up, right? Because the lawyer wasn't there. So you have to be careful, right? You have to be careful. You not only have to plan for it with money and plan for it with organization, but you also have to make sure that you have stop gaps and you have people that are looking out to make sure that what you're doing in real time doesn't come back to bite you, okay? Budget, organize, be careful. The next last one is be all about them. Okay, and this is a hard one. I kind of alluded to this earlier with my daughter, Sammy, and the fact that when she's telling me stories, it's not all about me, it's all about her, right? Which is fine, because I love her and she's awesome. But she does talk a lot. All about them is something that came from a guy by the name of Bruce Turkel. He actually wrote a book years ago called Building Brand Value, where he talked about 7 simple steps. One of those simple steps was all about them. And then he turned that into, more recently, a whole book which is where I kind of took that term from. He's a fantastic guy. You might see him. He's on a lot of the news shows as a marketing expert. But there's been a lot of things. I mean, we're really getting to talk about what this really gets into is customer service and how marketing is customer service. And whether customer service is in your title or not, every one of us is in customer service in our personal lives, in our business lives. It's all about customer service. And there's been some fantastic books. All these are really good on marketing and Hug Your Haters, Utility, all very good books. If you want to talk about great examples of not being all about them, then you got to read Scott Stratton's book called QR Codes Kill Kittens. Okay? So Scott loves to rail about people who get it wrong, and he's really good at it. So if you want to get some good examples of where people have gone wrong, it's a short book. You could probably read it in an hour, and it'll make you laugh. But here's a good example, right? So here's a Facebook page of Bank of America. They've changed it since then, so you won't find it anymore. What do they have on there? What is that? Does everybody know? QR code, right? You're already on the web, right? So am I supposed to take out my phone and take a picture of the computer screen so I can get it on my phone to the same place where I'm already? I feel like it's a never-ending loop, right? You're going to get sucked in and die. You can't. That was about someone saying we have to use QR codes. This is the new thing. Everybody's got QR codes, right? We're going to put it up on a billboard as people get into accidents trying to take pictures of QR codes, right? That's being all about us, not all about them, right? In terms of being all about them, there's three things that you can think about right away. And again, all of these things, I encourage you to check out these books. If any one of these topics speak to you, there's so much more to learn on all these, but I wanted to boil it down to the things that you can just think about. One is to be helpful, two is to be loyal, and three is to be responsive. The guy on helpfulness is a guy by the name of Jay Baer. He wrote a book called Utility. And he says, stop being amazing and start being useful, right? Be useful to people. And you can be useful to them in three ways. You can provide them self-serve information. You can be radically transparent, and you can be real-time relevant, okay? Self-serve information means how, for whatever your customer is, for whatever your industry is, how do you be the place that they go to for unbiased information, right? So if I want to start a project in my house, I'm going to go to Home Depot's website, okay? Because they have tons of information on how to remodel your kitchen, how to lay carpet, how to choose appliances, how to do stuff in your yard, right? They are providing that information. What industry are you in, and how can you become the expert that people come to for information? And oh, by the way, while I'm there, I buy stuff, right? But they're not selling to me while I'm there. They're providing all that information. They don't make me give them my email, right? They don't make me sign up for anything, a newsletter or anything like that. That information is free, right? Self-serve information. Nutrition facts for McDonald's. So McDonald's obviously gets a huge, over the years, gets beat up over its nutrition. Now they could hide from that, or they can own it, right? And the first thing when you go to their website is the first thing that sits there that points out is you can click on their nutrition facts, okay? And when you click into that, you can actually add up how unhealthy you're being. You can say, well, I just had a Big Mac and a fries and a Coke, and I just had 17,000 calories. Awesome. But they're not hiding it, right? So they are being transparent, and they're not trying to be anything different than who they are, right? And they sell a lot of Big Macs. The other thing you can be is real-time relevant, right? So Hilton Suggests, they have it's a Twitter account run by Hilton, discovery inspired by locals. You would think what they do is they talk about their hotels and their locations and things like that, but that's part of what they do, but it's not all of what they do, right? Here's a guy that handled Team McQueen. Where are my Atlanta peeps? Help, where can I find this heaven? A cheeseburger with donuts as buns, and he provides a picture. Hilton Suggests comes back. You can find it at Cypress, St. Pine, and Play it in Midtown. Haven't dared to try it, but let me know if you do. Team McQueen. How did you see my tweet? Just wondering. Twitter magic. Glad to be helpful. If you need any other suggestions around town, let me know. Cool, thanks. Follow you through my private account, right? They are out there. They have a team who is out there just trying to be helpful, right? They are looking for people in situations. They didn't, if you can see, the suggestion they gave was not a hotel of theirs. The suggestion they gave was not a restaurant in a hotel of theirs, right? They gave real information, and they were helpful. And you know what? Team McQueen is probably going to stay at a Hilton, right? Because they were helpful in real time. Be loyal, okay? How many people here have felt like this? Sorry, folks, this entrance is for new customers only. you'll need to use the other door, right? Is anybody here a DirecTV customer? DirecTV? How many people feel like if you called up, you're actually getting the best rate right now, right? Do you feel like who's getting a better rate, you or someone coming in off the street new? Right, right. And if I've actually done this. I've spent 40 infuriating minutes on the phone with them where they explain to me why I cannot have the best rate unless I dump them and come back 6 months later, okay? That is not them being loyal to me. If I have a chance, am I going to be loyal to them? No, right? The first chance I have, am I going to move to somewhere else? Do you want your customers staying with you out of obligation or because they want to, right? How do you make sure that you treat your customers like they're brand new all the time, okay? Be responsive. This is Jay Bear again, same picture. He just somehow looks happier here. He wrote another book called Hug Your Haters. His whole point with Hug Your Haters, oh, you guys, yeah? His whole point with Hug Your Haters is that people who take the time to complain about you care about you, okay? The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference, okay? If someone hates, they care, right? And these are opportunities, right? And his whole mantra for this book is to respond to every complaint, every time, everywhere with empathy and expediently, okay? People put things out on the web, people put things out on Twitter. 40% of the people who complain expect, even if they're not complaining directly to you, they expect a response. And they expect it quickly. Now that doesn't mean that you can please them. It doesn't mean they're right. It just means they have the right to be heard, right? And they have the right to feel like they've been heard. So these are all opportunities. No response is a response, okay? By not responding, you are telling them what you think of them. And haters are not your problem, ignoring them is, okay? Here's a great example. Guys, I'm trapped in an Amtrak elevator at BWI Airport, help. Amtrak, we're sorry to hear that, he's still in the elevator, right? Which is fantastic, except when you look at the dates, okay? It's not enough to respond, you have to do it expediently, okay? You have to act in real time, okay? Be helpful, be loyal, be responsive. The last piece is be meaningful. And this is where it gets a little bit more wishy-washy, all right? This is where things get a little bit softer, okay? We've moved in just the last 15 years from a place where what we talked about was charity, so companies, brands donating money, to we moved to cause marketing, right? Where everybody was supporting the cure or something, right? We've moved past that now to meaningful marketing, right? To helping people enjoy the meaning in their lives, to providing purpose and allowing people to do it. Millennials and younger expect this from companies. They want to work for companies that value their livelihood, that value their happiness. They want to buy from companies that value their happiness, right? There's been a lot of books. Again, if you only, the one book I told you to read was Made to Stick. The other one, Rules of the Red Rubber Ball, is awesome. Again, it's another like 30-minute read, but it's phenomenal. You will give it to someone else, I guarantee it. But a lot of people have talked about this, the story of purpose, the passion conversation, making the impossible possible. There are 3 things that you can start doing right away, okay? You can be more authentic, you can be purposeful, and you can focus on what one of our speakers, Dustin Garris, calls life profit. Being authentic means that you have to be true to yourself and people have to believe that you're being true to yourself. When the earthquake in Japan took place, Bing put out this tweet. For every retweet, Bing will give $1 to Japan quake victims up to $100,000, which sounds on the face of it like it's not too bad. They got beat up pretty quick by folks, okay? Not sure Bill Gates would approve. Bing donate money, but only if you promote them with a colorful hashtag. Hey Bing, there's some kids dying of cancer who could do with some help. Maybe you could ask for retweets to give them a hand, right? It does not feel authentic when you do things by asking other people to do things for you, right? Yeah, I'll help you across the street if you give me your email address. No, right? That's not authenticity. Authenticity is doing things because you want to help people, right? Purposeful. having a purpose, Joey Ryman has a company called Bright House. He wrote this book, The Story of Purpose. He talks about your purpose as being the intersection between your unique talents and the needs of the world. That requires you to understand two things: what your unique talents are, where you have a right to play, and what the world needs from you. And if you can find that intersection, you can create purpose, okay? Here's an example of not having purpose. Starbucks decided that they were going to have their baristas start having race discussions with their customers, okay? They were going to start, as they were delivering their coffee to them, they were going to start talking to them about race relations. People did not buy this, and so there was an onslaught of memes. Starbucks improving race relations since never. Welcome to Starbucks, let's discuss your white privilege, right? Starbucks, Race Together, invites customers to talk about race, uses only white hands in related photos, okay? You have to have your unique talents, right? So Starbucks' unique talents is not talking about race relations, right? It's not solving that world problem. Just because there is a world problem doesn't mean that you can talk about it in a way that's going to connect with people. You have to find your unique purpose in the world, okay? And I'm going to talk about a good example for purpose in a second. So we talked about someone who wasn't authentic, and we talked about someone who wasn't purposeful. I think one that does both those is the Campaign for Real Beauty. Now, that's not to say they haven't had hiccups, right? And they haven't done some things that people haven't related to. But when you think about the Campaign for Real Beauty, is everybody familiar with this campaign? People know what we're talking about here. So if you think about whether that feels authentic, the way they do it, and whether it plays in a space where they have a right to play, I would say they probably check off both those boxes, which is why it's been so successful. And they're able to do things that really connect with people. So I want to show a quick little video. Well, not super quick, but.
I showed up to a place I'd never been, and there was a guy with a draft board, and he couldn't see none, they didn't see us. Talking about your hair. I didn't know what he was doing, but then I could tell after several questions that he was drawing me.
Tell me about your chin.
It kind of protrudes a little bit, especially when I smile.
Your jaw.
My mom told me I had a good jaw,
What would be your most prominent features?
kind of a fat, rounded face.
The older I've gotten, the more freckled I've gotten.
I would say I have a pretty big forehead.
Once I get a sketch, I say thank you very much, and then they leave. I don't see it.
All I had been told before the sketch was to get friendly with this other woman, Chloe.
Today I'm going to ask you some questions about the person you met earlier, and I'm going to ask you some general questions about their face.
She was thin, so you could see her cheekbones. And her chin, it was a nice, thin chin.
She had nice eyes.
They lit up when she spoke.
She had blue eyes, very nice blue eyes. So here we go. This is a sketch that you helped me create. And that's a sketch that somebody described of you.
Yes. She looks closed off and fatter. Sadder, too. The second one looks more open, friendly, and happy. I should be more grateful of my natural beauty. It impacts the choices and the friends that we make, the jobs we apply for, how we treat our children. It impacts everything. Couldn't be more critical to your happiness.
Do you think you're more beautiful than you say?
We spend a lot of time as women analyzing and trying to fix the things that aren't quite right. And we should spend more time appreciating the things that we do like.
So does that feel authentic? Right? Does that feel purposeful? Right? That works for them. right? And I believe it. I believe that they believe that, and that's something that's important to them. The third thing is an idea called life profit. And a guy by the name of Dustin Garris, really cool guy, used to work at Procter & Gamble and then went out on his own to do this thing. He talks about making your life more memorable and how people want products and services and experiences that help them make their lives more memorable. The fact that most people can only remember 3 days out of the last month, okay? Because we're not living memorable lives, because we're not doing things that are meaningful to us, right? And being memorable and meaningful means going beyond money, right? Means doing things that are for you, that are for your family, right? And that's important as anything else we've talked about today. There's some brands that are really good at it. Red Bull is really good at it. They have embraced extreme sports, and they create these events and experiences that enrich people's lives, right? People love going to these things. They love preparing for them. They love playing with them. And so Red Bull has done a great job of that. This is something that I've actually taken into my own life in terms of, as after 20 years of doing marketing, kind of woke up and figured out I wasn't maybe adding a lot of meaning to people's lives. So what I did a couple of years ago is I actually became a deputy with Sheriff's Department in Douglas County because I was looking to give back, because I was looking for things to do. And the interesting thing is you look at my daughters there and how excited they are. They never asked me to come to school before I was a cop. You know what I mean? They never wanted me there to talk about marketing. I never saved a life doing marketing. Not to say that I don't love doing marketing, right? But I was looking for another way to enrich my life, to help enrich others' lives. And what it's allowed me to do is grow in ways that I never thought was possible at the age that I'm at. I have friends who are in investment banking, and the question they ask me is, well, that takes a lot of time, right? Like, yeah, I had to go through academy, I had to go through field training, I put in 80 hours a month sometimes. And they're like, well, couldn't you be making money doing that? Couldn't you be, growing your business? Yeah, I probably could be spending that time growing my business. But that's not the point, right? The point is, what's the legacy you're gonna leave behind? Where's your happiness at, right? And so all the things that we talked about are super important, but the idea of life profit is to me as important. And you can think about it not only in terms of what you're doing for yourself, but what you're doing for your customers. How can you do your products and services and experiences in ways that help people live more memorable lives, that help them achieve more meaning in their lives? If you look hard enough, there's going to be intersections. There's going to be places that you can play, okay? And if you're lucky enough, you might actually be the guy who was an internet sensation for catching a chicken, okay? That call actually came out as a chicken was trying to cross the road. And I thought someone was kidding me. And I actually had to call out unable to locate the chicken. And then the chicken ran across the road. And I caught it and reunited it with its owner. But be meaningful, authentic, purposeful, and think about life profit. These are the 7 things we've gone through. Be something, be experiential, be simple, be ready to be creative, be flexible, be all about them, be meaningful. 15 years, 7 big takeaways, 21 actionable ideas. Hopefully there's at least a few things that have connected with you that you can take away and start using. And what I encourage you to think about is this: great things rarely come from your comfort zone. So get out of your comfort zone. Do something a little bit different. Think about how you can make some change and have some fun while you're doing it. There's my information. You can tweet me, you can email me. Brand Manage Camp is our conference. Next year, if you want to come out to Vegas, we can do that. Again, if you want the slides, just drop me an email and I'll send you a link to them. So thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure for me to be here. And I'm happy to answer any questions or stick around if people want to ask questions or however you want to do it. Okay, thank you.